Why would a person want to be a billionaire? It is the least important thing we have to spare. And if by chance they all should vanish into air, there would not be a bird or tree who cares. 'Cause rich folks are a dime a dozen, rich folks are a dime a dozen, rich folks a dime a dozen. Rich folks are a dime a dozen, rich folks are a dime a dozen, rich folks a dime a dozen. We made it here onto this small revolving sphere, to love and hurt and skirt between courage and fear. So go for status quo or keep evolving here. A final judgment comes among your peers. So don't forget, rich folks are a dime a dozen, rich folks are a dime a dozen, rich folks a dime a dozen. Rich folks are a dime a dozen, rich folks are a dime a dozen, rich folks a dime a dozen.
I can't comment specifically on a lawsuit because I haven't seen it, but I've been asked other times about violation of First Amendment rights, and in our impression it's not, because people are able to go out and solicit work within the confines of the ordinance. In fact, on the day in question when we had the enforcement operation, we were at 5 locations and only made arrests at 3 of those locations. So at 2 of the locations, the day laborers were out there and they followed the restrictions in the ordinance, and they're able to solicit work as long as they stay within the confines of the ordinance. And it was a culmination of we had about 114 different complaints about day laborers at these locations. I mean, it's been an ongoing issue for many years, but we had some higher numbers, I guess you'd say, of complaints, and we decided that we would take action on those complaints.
And those were at the various locations where they're gathering.
Right. Those are the locations where the day laborers commonly congregate, and where we get our complaints at.
Okay. And your job is simply, you got to keep moving that thing all the time, right?
Got to get some attention.
You got the technique there. I see. So, have you ever had the police come and tell you you can't do this or anything?
No, I mean, they had a banner out here. Like, they used to have a banner out there. Code enforcement said they can't have a banner out here on the public sidewalk, but I mean, a sign twirler, that doesn't bother me.
Okay.
So I don't know.
They said you can't have a banner out here?
Yeah. I mean, like something that says, like, you know, something.
Just sitting here?
Yeah. On a public sidewalk, can't do it, so code enforcement got on them. So, you know, they figured, hey, a sign, they can't do anything about that.
And they never told you can't twirl the sign or anything like that?
I mean, I've seen the police go by, code enforcement, but having a banner sit out here for some reason, that's no good. I don't understand why. But I'm happy, at least I can work.
Did you know there's an ordinance in the city of Costa Mesa that actually bans doing this?
Is there?
Yeah, did you know that?
No.
The ordinance also prohibits the kind of sign twirling and so on that businesses do.
Right.
2 years ago, in 2007, I interviewed a number of the sign twirlers out there, and then more recently in November, I went out and filmed quite a few of them, and none of them said they had ever been approached by police or warned in any way about anything. Have any of those people ever been cited or arrested? Or?
I don't know for certain if they have. I'd say if they have, it'd be very few. And again, we don't get the complaints on those, and when we do get the complaints, we do go out there and perhaps we make an educational contact, just as we've done with the day laborers. We've gone out to the day labor areas where they congregate, and we've instructed them on what they can and cannot do. So we try to handle it through warnings and educating the people involved. but at some point, you have to step up and do enforcement. So if we've had complaints, I can tell you we've had a few complaints in the last couple of days about the sign twirlers, so we're responding to those just like we would any other complaint, and we'll go out there, we'll make contact with the twirler and probably the business as well, and say, look, this is a violation of the city ordinance, you need to stop doing that.
But there hasn't been any, has there been any active enforcement on their side?
Again,
of the
I don't
issue
know
at
for
all?
certain. I would say probably not. I mean, it could have been isolated incidents if it was egregious enough, but we'd have to search our records and go through that.
So
I think Maldiff asked for that information, and we responded through the city attorney to their public records request. More a matter of kind of a reactive enforcement rather than a proactive enforcement on there. That's what you're saying, right? Okay, and how many were arrested since this started in September? It was one day.
Just only one day?
It was one day, and we made 12 arrests, and we made 4 arrests at 3 different locations, and that was it. That's the only enforcement we've done on it. Deportation, we have nothing to do with that. Okay. So, as you're probably aware, we have an agreement with ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, where they screen everyone that we arrest in the city. Now, if those individuals at the time they were arrested, if they had valid identification, they would have been cited and released. Mm-hmm. So more than likely they didn't have identification with them. So then we have the authority to bring them here for the purposes of identifying them. Mm-hmm. And that's how we do it. Just as if you got stopped by an officer who didn't have identification, we could bring you in for 2 hours to determine your identity. Yeah. And many times we have, somebody uses your name and date of birth, and if we don't bring them in, then you have the outstanding warrant. So. Yeah. So, and we never know if they get deported. We don't follow up. Right. If ICE suspects they may not be here legally, they put a detainer on them, which allows them to go more in depth, and then they determine, they're the ones that ultimately determine if they're here illegally and what's going to happen to them. Okay. I know this one story, they say that they were deported within 2 days, and I've never heard of anybody being deported that quickly. Mm-hmm. Now, unless they had other charges outstanding, maybe they violated something before, but I've never heard of anyone being deported within 2 days. Okay. Any push from the mayor or from the city council to get the police to you guys to go out and do this? No, this was initiated within the police department by the officers that work that area that deal with those complaints. We actually had open projects on them at those locations because of the number of complaints that we do get. And we have the opportunity now, the way our work schedule is, where we have a day each week where there's 2 squads of officers working in an area. So they can do a little bit more than they normally do instead of just answering calls. So in a way it's proactive, but it's reactive, if that makes sense. We have the complaints, but it gives them the opportunity to do something a little bit out of the box, as opposed to just constantly responding to the complaints and trying to deal with them as they come in. They have and we do all kinds of things. We work with probation and parole on these days, and work with gangs, and we do extra enforcement on gang enforcement. Other problem areas, we had a problem in the city park where they were cutting the trees down. Mm-hmm. So we spent more time out there doing surveillance out there. So we use these days for a number of different things. Mm-hmm. So this was generated within the police department.